So we're going to start a review of the four main sociological theories. So I say review because this was actually in one of Janelle's lectures earlier, but we're just going to quickly go over it because I think they are pretty important. So the first one is structural functionalism. It's influenced by the ideas of Herbert Spencer and Emile Durkheim. Herbert Spencer was a philosopher, I think, around the late 19th century, and Emile Durkheim was actually, some consider him the father of sociology, and he was in the early and middle parts of the 20th century. So this concept of structural functionalism has ideas of the two of theirs and even a couple of others. But these are the two big names for structural functionalism, specifically Emile Durkheim. And the general concept for functionalism is that societies are held together by the interdependence of each part. So Herbert Spencer actually thought of functionalism as a body, how a body can't live without all of the different organs acting together. So that's basically what functionalism is. It's a little bit more complicated than that, obviously, but it's just schools, governments, all of these social institutions are working together to keep the society alive. So healthy societies can fix imbalances and return to a state of dynamic equilibrium. Unhealthy societies cannot. So we'll talk actually in a minute about social dysfunction. Social dysfunctions kind of throw that dynamic equilibrium off, and healthy societies find a way to return to that equilibrium, and unhealthy societies can't. So social facts, these are the rules, religions, morals, and values that hold people together in a society. So it's those that shared culture that holds them together. Each society holds different functions and dysfunctions. So the different types of functions and dysfunction, we have manifest functions. Those are the intended and anticipated functions of the structure. So that's the job of what we're talking about, the explicit job. A school educates a population, a grocery store feeds the local community, a movie theater provides entertainment. It's just the basic obvious function of anything that we're talking about. Latent functions are those that are unexpected. So they're usually like secondary sort of byproducts, usually unintended. Sometimes they're harmful, sometimes they're beneficial, sometimes they're neutral. But they're usually unexpected. So, for example, other than providing food to a town, a restaurant may promote social interactions between people. So if it's like a pizzeria or like a really popular place in a small town, it does provide food, and that's what the restaurant was built for, but it also does provide a social environment for the people of that town. So that would be a latent function. And a social dysfunction is something that reduces the stability of the society because of its negative effects. So a local news station knowingly releasing false information may be removed from society with free reporting and a willing government. So that's kind of what we were talking about before, about returning to that state of dynamic equilibrium. Because you could see how knowingly releasing false information can be very harmful to a society. So if there is a free press and a working government, hopefully, that country would be able to get rid of that media outlet. The second one is conflict theory. It is created from the ideas of Karl Marx originally, and later by Max Weber. So society is held together by the competition for unlimited resources. And that's a theme that you see a lot in sociology, even in biology and evolution, this concept of what's called a Malthusian ceiling. We live on a finite world and we have finite resources. So conflict theory is basically just looking at society through that lens, how we're all acting and we're competing for resources. So that should say limited right over here. That should not say unlimited. So I will fix that after, but it is a competition for limited resources. I just want to clarify that. And all societies have resources unequally distributed between a ruling and working class. So Marx and Weber said that every society has resources, but this conflict comes because the resources are unequally distributed. Hegemony is the controlling of culture by the ruling class to keep the working class subdued. So we have these two classes. Obviously, the resources are distributed more heavily amongst the ruling class than the working class. And then there are a multitude of ways the ruling class keeps the working class in order. And one of the most important ways that they do that is through hegemony. So the controlling of culture means that the ruling class is basically forming the culture, and the culture that they are forming is one that's beneficial to the system that they're currently running. So a lot of times I see the example of the Protestant work ethic used for this as an example. So if you are taught that the Protestant work ethic is super important, you probably think about that concept as you're a hard worker, you know, your life is dedicated to working. What makes a good person is a good worker. We can also look at that through the lens of hegemony and say that that is a concept that was perpetuated by the ruling class, and the purpose of that concept was to make sure that the working class was happy with working all of these long hours. So it's basically without force, hegemony is controlling the culture, and that's how they keep the working class in line. So Marx believed that the collapse of capitalism was inevitable, but Weber did not. And one reason being this concept called the rationalization of society. And that just means as we become aware of all of this, we become aware of how we work and what our work is worth. We become aware of the efficiency as well. So we're trying to minimize our effort and maximize our result, which just becomes common sense, you know? Okay, theory number 3. Oh, and I just wanted to mention really quickly that those first 2 theories were macro sociological theories, because we're looking at sociology from a top-down perspective. So we're looking at the entirety. So structural functionalism, we're sort of looking at these structures and how they create society. And then conflict theory, we're sort of looking about how these different institutions compete and these different classes compete. So symbolic interactionism is micro sociology. So it's going to be more of a bottom-up approach. And it's basically just talking about how the exchange of information between individuals forms culture. So let's take a look at that. Symbolic interactionism is influenced by the ideas of Max Weber, Herbert Blumer, and most notably George Herbert Mead. So he's the one whose name is usually tied to symbolic interactionism, George Herbert Mead. And the theory focuses on how the exchange of information between individuals shapes society. Individuals assign meaning to symbols based on personal experience and social context. And we actually do this a lot, but we don't realize it. So a symbol's meaning may change for an individual when he or she observes it in a different context. So say you visit this pizzeria and you think this is the most amazing pizza you've ever had. It's great. You will tell everybody that it is the world's best pizza. If you take a group of 6 friends over there and all 6 of them think that it is just average and mediocre, your opinion is probably going to change of the pizza. That's the example that I can think of. I mean, that's really basically what it's talking about. The symbol's meaning. The symbol is the pizza and the meaning is different. When it changes in a social context, the meaning of the actual symbol is going to change as well. So because of this, society is constructed from the understanding of the interpretations of individuals. So symbolic interactionism is basically just saying that all of our interactions and all of our realities are just formed from our interactions with each other and how we perceive others' perceptions. So the principle of meaning is central in symbolic interactionism. So we ascribe meaning, generate meaning through interactions with others, and we change these meanings based on interpretation, social context, and the thoughts of others. So that's basically what I just said with the pizza example. We give meaning, you look at this pizza, you taste it, you think it is the best pizza in the world. Through our interactions with others, those 6 people we're bringing, we're going to change our meanings based on the interpretation, the social context, and the thoughts of those friends. So we'll change our mind. We probably won't think it's the greatest pizza ever again. And another concept that comes up with symbolic interactionism are Mead's principles of the I and the me. So the I is the individualistic self. It's basically who you are. I is the subject pronoun, if anybody is good at grammar. So it's the active form of the first person. So grammatically, he kind of did this on purpose. So the I is the self, the individual, and the me is the social self. So that would be the object noun, and that's that's which is observed and interpreted. So that's basically how that's your representation to other people when you interact with them. So symbolic interactionism, in a nutshell, is just our culture is formed from our specific interactions with others, and our interactions with others are based on our interpretations of others. That's really what symbolic interactionism is. So social constructionism is the fourth one. I see the first three most of the time. This one does pop up though, so it's a good idea to review it. Social constructionism, this sort of experienced a rise in popularity in the US because of Berger and Luckman. Those are the two sociologists whose names are most closely tied with social constructionism. So social constructionism basically is the reality is not inherent, but is constructed socially through interactions. So if you ever hear anybody say blank is a social construct, or this is a social construct, they're referencing social constructionism. It's basically just looking at reality through the fact that a lot of the things we take for reality are actually just social constructs. So it's similar to symbolic interactionism in that interpretation has a lot to do with everything. And the primary way that society involves in both theories is through collective change of meaning. So again, it's the difference, the change in meaning of the symbols. So for example, with social constructionism, those concepts would be race, sex, wealth, age, and a number of concepts. Those are all constructs of society. So basically, there is no one objective reality with any of these. They're all constructed because of our society, and they all vary widely throughout different societies. So unlike symbolic interactionism, social constructionism explains society from a micro and a macro social perspective. And it also challenges the long-held scientific view that there's one objective reality. So that was the scientific view, but social constructionism says not really. Race, for example, is a social construct. Okay, that brings us to our first review question. So which of the following does not list a social institution and its manifest function? Nice. Okay, so 100% of you said C, which is the correct answer. So I think this was a pretty easy question. Which of the following does not list a social institution and its manifest function? You would just have to know that manifest function is what the institution was built for. So an elementary school provides children with knowledge and basic social skills. That would be a manifest function. A library provides the town with books and videos. That would also be a manifest function because that is what the institution was built for. A church provides a place of worship and community. Again, also a manifest function. And a nightclub promotes the spread of COVID-19. Would not be a manifest function. I mean, unless someone was building a nightclub specifically for that reason, which I hope nobody would be. But that would be a latent function, and that would be an example of a harmful latent function. Would be, the spread of COVID.